I'm a 17-year-old YouTuber and professional video editor with millions of views and years of experience to my name. Here's how to edit videos that go viral and make you a ton of money in the process, whether you're editing for yourself or even somebody else. To start, you'll obviously need a video idea, script, and voiceover depending on the type of video you want to create. I'll assume you have that already, which means now we have to gather a bunch of footage to edit with. There are two main types of footage that you'll likely use: A-roll and B-roll. A-roll is just footage where the voiceover is inside of the video. For example, in a clip where somebody is talking directly to the camera. B-roll, on the other hand, is footage that goes on top of the voiceover, which can be in the form of stock videos, footage shot with the camera, and even screen-recorded clips off of YouTube, to name a few examples. A good rule of thumb is to gather enough A-roll to last the whole video, and at the same time, get enough B-roll to cover the whole length of the video 2 to 4 times over. Maybe it seems overkill to you, but trust me, you can never have too much B-roll. Depending on the type of video you're making, you'll get your B-roll in a variety of different ways. For example, on my game dev channel, most of the B-roll that I use is directly taken from the game and just screen recorded. If your video is more cinematic, you might want to go out and film some stuff, and really, you just have to get creative with this. Maybe if you're editing for somebody else, they've already given you stuff, which is great. If you end up not having enough B-roll, though, stock footage is great to fill the gaps. And lucky for you, stock footage is actually really easy to find on the internet. Many times, it's even free. Artlist.io, Envato Elements, and Storyblocks are some of the most popular paid solutions. If you sign up for any of these using the affiliate links in my description, then I'll actually get a small commission and it helps support me. However, some people can't or won't pay for stuff like this, and I understand that, so I just recommend you use Pexels.com in that case. In fact, one of the editors on this channel actually uses Pexels. Remember to use my links in the description to sign up for any of these. When you've gathered all your B-roll and A-roll if you decide to include it, then lay down the footage for your intro. Don't even worry about the rest of your video yet. As an editor, the first few seconds of your video are easily the most important part, as they usually dictate whether the viewer stays for the rest of the video or not. The average person today has severe undiagnosed ADHD and the attention span of a goldfish, so it's important that you blow up their screen with stimulation in the opening shots of your video. If you have A-roll with your face in it, then it may be beneficial to start with that footage, as it creates a personal human connection with the viewer. If not, no worries. As you lay out the rest of your intro, make sure you have about 3 times as much B-roll as A-roll, or just don't include A-roll at all. Try to make cuts every 1 to 4 seconds as well, so that you keep your viewers hooked. If you have a voiceover, or honestly, even if you don't, just try to keep your intro as concise as possible, because when an intro drags on, it's really just so easy to click off the video. Also, don't worry about crazy visual effects or motion graphics quite yet, as for now, we just want a rough edit to work with. When you've got your intro, lay out the rest of your footage across the entire video. Once again, if you have A-roll, make sure you're including about 3 times as much B-roll as you have A-roll, as otherwise, it's really boring just to look at your face the whole time, no matter how attractive you are. And believe me, I know you are. No need to go as crazy as you did in the intro, but still try to keep your cuts quick and try and not, lose the viewer. This especially applies if you have a voiceover in your video. A half-second pause in between 2 parts of a voiceover may not seem like much, but when you have it throughout an entire video, it becomes definite. If you have 2 parts of a voiceover back to back and they sound rough, literally just overlap them like this on 2 separate audio tracks and it'll sound really smooth. Then when you get to the outro, just like the intro, make sure it doesn't drag out or your retention graph will have a ton of viewers dropping off in the last 15 seconds. Either keep your outro short and simple or just don't include one at all. Just make sure you leave at least 5 seconds for an end screen. Now, onto the fun stuff. Let's start by spicing up our video with subtitles. Subtitles are a great retention hack and actually aren't that hard to make. In your video editor of choice, write out some text and center it. Pick a nice font, scale it down, and move it to the bottom of the screen so that it's not too distracting. If you don't want subtitles that are animated, then great, just duplicate it a bunch of times and you're done. Otherwise, start by making a keyframe for the current scale of the text and move it about 5 frames out from the beginning. Then scale it down a little bit, but not all the way, and add that keyframe to the beginning. Finally, scale it a little bit bigger than your last keyframe and stick it about 3 frames out from the beginning. If you play, you should get a really nice pop-in subtitle effect. Now, as I said before, all you have to do is duplicate this and use it wherever you want. Obviously changing the text though. I like to always include subtitles in my intro because, like I said, it's a great retention hack, but otherwise use them sort of sparingly throughout the rest of the video. It really all comes down to personal preference. Whatever you do though, just make sure they're not too distracting. I like to think they're a nice supplement to whatever's going on the screen and really shouldn't be there just to overtake everything. Next, I'm gonna show you how to make all those crazy transitions and motion effects that you see other YouTubers use. It's honestly not too difficult to make all of these ourselves, but most YouTubers work smarter instead of harder. What I mean by this is they really just use other people's presets to get it done quickly. I'll leave links to a few popular preset packs that I use in the description depending on your video editor of choice. Otherwise, literally just look up like free preset packs for whatever editor you're using. You might have to sign up for an email list or something, but it's totally worth it, trust me. Just like subtitles, wherever you use these in your video, they really shouldn't be too distracting. There's no one-size-fits-all rule for this, so you really just have to experiment and see what looks good and what doesn't. Here's another cool editing trick. In my videos, I like to have a bit of fun and do a lot of motion tracking. For example, I don't show my face, so sometimes I'll just have my profile picture track the head of somebody in a stock video to make it look like it's me. To do this, you'll first need an image and then a video to go in the background. Line them up and then scroll to the beginning of the video and the image. Then move your image to wherever you want it to track and make keyframes for position and scale. Next, scrub forward a couple frames and move it again and make 2 more keyframes. Keep doing this for the rest of the clip, and when you're done, you've just motion tracked an image successfully. Good editing is all about being creative, so really just have fun with this. One last thing I like to do in editing is to take advantage of scale. For example, if the voiceover says something stupid, then I'll scale the clips down on screen to about 80%, like this. this. This creates emphasis and really just makes it funnier for some reason. Scaling things up is cool too, like especially when it gets all grainy and low resolution. It's really all up to your artistic touch, but just have fun with this, just like anything else. Scaling also doesn't have to be stagnant, especially in your intro, but wherever you have something still, try making keyframes for the start and end of clips to have it scale up over time, like this. Especially if you have still images in your edit, this just adds some motion to it and makes it a lot more interesting. Once again, you really just have to figure out what looks good and experiment. Now that we've polished up our video with all of these cool effects, we now need to add sounds to bring the video to life. Sound design may seem like a small part of the edit, but honestly, it's the single biggest thing that turns a decent edit into an incredible edit. I just rip most of my sounds off of YouTube and a couple other platforms that I'll talk about when we get to music. I've also found it useful to go just ask other YouTubers for the sounds that they use, and it usually works. As for actually using sound effects, just use them anywhere it makes sense. I know that's helpful. But for example, if an image slides onto the screen, use a whoosh sound effect or some kind of rock slide because that's what would happen in real life, I guess. Whatever you do, just keep building up a large catalog of sounds so that when you do need to actually use them, you can vary it up as well. Like, don't use the same pop sound effect 5 times in a row or it'll be boring. Depending on your style of editing, you may also want to tone back or lean into sound design more, which is fine. Just never ignore it completely. Trust me. Up next is music. You're gonna want to start by sectioning out your video in some form or fashion. Basically, anytime you change the subject or whenever the mood changes or when you go to a different place, etc. It really all depends on what's relevant to your video, but figure this out and mark each section of your video in your video editing software. After that, go find music to use in your video, but don't just grab any. Using copyrighted music comes with a ton of risks that you really don't want, so make sure you're actually able to use whatever music. Non-copyright music on YouTube is usually pretty bad, cheesy, or all of the above, so I personally use a couple different platforms for music. First is Thematic. Thematic has a really generous free plan, giving you 5 downloads per month and a humongous catalog of free music to go through. If you want unlimited downloads and even more music, you can either give songs ratings or pay $8 a month for Thematic Premium. This video isn't sponsored, but if you buy Thematic Premium with the link in my description, I take a pretty significant cut. I used to rely on Thematic quite a bit, but nowadays I use Epidemic Sound. Epidemic Sound has a way bigger catalog of music and more advanced discovery tools. It costs $9 a month for the personal plan and also includes sound effects. Once again, this video isn't sponsored by them, but if you sign up with the link in my description, I also take a cut of the sale. Of course, there are plenty of other platforms out there for you to use. Or honestly, you can just use Nintendo's music, as they allow creators to use their music in their content as long as they provide, quote, creative expression on top of them. Whatever you do, just be careful. When you've got your music, lay it out on your timeline underneath all of your footage based on the sections that you made earlier. It's gonna be really loud at first, so I keep the volume in between -20 and -10 decibels so that you can still hear the voiceover. If you ever need to cut the music for a second, like when you say something funny and want to isolate the voiceover, don't just cut the ends like this because it could sound rough. Instead, still cut both ends, but add little fade out and fade in transitions to the start and end of the snippets to make it sound better and not so harsh. Similarly, if you ever have songs back to back and they sound rough, we can just have them fade into each other. Or you can even take advantage of sound design and use a riser or something to kind of mask the transition between the two songs. When you've got all of this done, polish up any loose ends in your video and you're finished. If you like this video and want to learn how to start making money off of your edits and come up with viral video ideas, go watch my video about how I monetized my channel in only 30 days.